Eugene.
So I want to join many of those in this room, to congratulate on a fine volume. It's fine, it's on the bedside. It gives me a lot of thought before I go to bed. I think if you think of the worst case scenario, then I think it will make sense to keep, the NCMP scheme, right? That's the first point. The second point really is, I think the next GE will be the most consequential GE, right? So Mr. Leong's hope, may actually come true. But I think when I look at many of the essays, right, I don't know whether I can address this point, right? Because I don't think we give Singaporean voters enough credit, right? That because of the NCMP scheme, voters are not will be more prepared to vote for the ruling party rather than the opposition. I really have great difficulty with that because I think you don't give enough credit, to the Singaporean voters, and I think that's something that you should address. I mean, so in the same vein, I don't understand why the PAP keeps reminding people about the NCMP scheme, right? Because it just has no traction. So I welcome any views on that. Thank you.
You can also join in if you want. Yeah. So for me, but I did say in the book that in my interaction with residents, I don't feel that, of course, nobody asks about the scheme. It only comes in as something that's after the elections, then people will think about it, who will fill up the spot. Yeah. But for me, why I'm pushing for it not to be even existence is that because we need to focus on what's next for our next 40 years. I mean, we have 40 years, he has served some views, he has gotten people in, but I feel that there are many other things that we need to work on to have a better system, whether it's a proportional representation or for me it's pushing for more of those changes to things like at least the EBRC rules and the GRC systems and all that. I think if that has been fixed, we don't even need to talk about the NCMP scheme at all. So, but back to Eugene's point about the voters itself, yes, I mean, to me that's also one small irritant part of it, because I feel that too much airtime is really spent on the issue that's really no traction. Honestly, there's no traction with the people. It's just a lot of airtime spent because the PAP will bring it up, and there's no way that the opposition doesn't reply to it, especially the Workers' Party, which has a lion's share of the past NCMP posts. It has to respond to it, right? So it's just a waste of everybody's time, in my opinion.
Eugene, thanks very much. I think in our interviews with politicians, academics, observers, in our own experiences too with voters, yes, it doesn't register in the minds of voters when they mark that X on the ballot paper. So it would then seem to suggest that the PAP is altruistic or nearly altruistic in having this scheme to ensure some sort of opposition representation. But I think what I was also trying to sketch out in the book was that there has been a changing raison d'etre of the scheme. When Lee Kuan Yew first introduced the scheme, and Walter Woon's chapter also talks about that, it was about giving ministers, younger MPs, backbenchers, and younger voters a sense of the opposition. The sense that I think if they quote-unquote screw up, people will see the ill effects of having opposition and therefore would be wiser. But it has since morphed, I think, since then. And more lately, Ho Chong Tong is saying that it is a stabilizer for a first-past-the-post system. It has morphed along the way. So the question I also pose maybe back to all of you here is, what's the raison d'etre, what's the rationale for the scheme that the PAP has?
And I think within certain circles, you see, like I do hang around with people in the establishment in the university, and they always come to me quietly and say, "Oh yeah, you're doing a good job. We need one or two outspoken people in Parliament." And for them, the idea of having an NCMP is a good thing. So it does resonate with them, and they might, wherever they live. They might decide that, okay, look, if I give somebody a chance to be the best loser, it may not be a bad thing. But I agree with you. I think for the bulk of the population, it's got no traction at all. But for a certain group, which actually are people who the PAP leadership probably talks to and play golf with, and I do hang out with some, that this does have some traction.